The sun never truly rose on Titan, only hinted at its presence behind the eternal haze of methane clouds and Saturn's golden glow. The colony, nestled beneath the planet's thick crust, was a living organism of glass domes and subterranean tunnels, a fragile heartbeat in the cold silence of the Saturnian system. Dr. Elise Ramirez stood on the observation platform of Sector 3, fingers gliding over a touchscreen interface as data shimmered in soft blue light before her. She had spent the last 20 years studying alien signals, false alarms, solar echoes, debris static. Yet something about the latest pulse didn't sit right. It came in rhythmic intervals, each loop consistent, precise, intentional. "Elise," came a voice behind her. She turned to see Commander Rio Harlan, his uniform crisp, his face carved with fatigue. "Council meeting in 10. You coming?" "I need 5 more minutes," she said, eyes flicking back to the signal pattern. "This isn't just noise. It's structured." "You've said that about half a dozen blips this cycle," Rio replied, a flicker of amusement cutting through his usual grim tone. "This one's different. It's repeating a sequence. Binary pairs, but with frequency modulation that resembles a basic data handshake. If it's natural, it's the most well-organized anomaly I've ever seen." Rio stepped closer, peering at the data without pretending to understand it. "Just tell me if we need to start evacuating." "No," she said, then hesitated. "Not yet." He gave a nod and left her to her thoughts. Elsewhere in the colony, beneath the surface where titanium struts held the breathable world together, Tasha Ven sat cross-legged in a dimly lit server bay. Barely 17 and already considered an elite systems hacker, she spent more time in the meshnet than she did in real sunlight, what little filtered through Titan's dome. She was isolating packet anomalies, tracing their origin back to what she assumed was a rogue AI system in the agricultural module. But the deeper she probed, the less it resembled a glitch and more like intrusion. She paused, blinking at a command line she hadn't opened. "Auth override accepted. Spectral node accessed." Tasha's eyes widened. She hadn't accessed anything remotely called spectral node. Before she could execute a trace, the line vanished, replaced by static, then silent. She whispered to herself, "That's not good." Above ground, Elise finally pulled herself away from the monitor and made her way to the council hall. The amphitheater-style room was filled with chatter and low murmurs. Titan's governor, Lien Kor, presided over the session with practiced authority. When Elise entered, all eyes turned to her. "Dr. Ramirez," Kor said, "please brief us on your findings." Elise stepped forward, tapped her pad, and a 3D projection lit the room. The signal, pulsing, layered, repeating. "We've been monitoring this transmission for the past 40 hours. It originates from deep space but is being redirected through the rings of Saturn, likely using particulate reflection to mask its true source." Governor Kor raised an eyebrow. "Are you suggesting it's artificial?" "I'm saying it's not random. It's repeating structured packets. Not in any human language or encryption I've seen." Another council member, a portly man named Vistal, scoffed. "We've had 100 of these. Space is noisy." "True," Elise said, her tone steady, "but noise doesn't organize itself into sequence and checksum. This is intentional." Commander Rio, seated near the front, leaned in. "Is it a threat?" "I don't know." "Can it be a greeting?" asked Governor Kor. Elise looked at the projection again. She wanted to believe in the promise of first contact, that the universe wasn't empty of minds. But the signal felt cold. Clinical. It carried the efficiency of a machine, rather than the artistry of a culture. "No," she said finally. "It doesn't sound like a greeting." That night, Tasha ran a second scan of the server grid. The unknown node had vanished, but something else lingered. Her personal drone assistant, a simple AI flyer named Juno, began acting erratically. Its flight pattern jittered. Its voice modulation changed. Then, in a burst of motion, it flew headlong into a wall and shattered. Tasha knelt beside the wreckage, eyes wide with unease. She ran diagnostic tools over Juno's logs and found the same spectral pattern Elise had detected buried in its code. She didn't know what it meant, but she knew where she had to take it. The following morning, Elise heard a chime at her lab door. She opened it to find Tasha holding a scorched data core wrapped in heat-resistant cloth. "You need to see this," the girl said without preamble. Within 10 minutes, the two were poring over the logs in silence. Elise felt her spine tighten. There it was again, the signal. Not in raw space this time, but integrated into the behavioral subroutine of a machine. That meant it wasn't just being broadcast, it was being used. "They're already here," Elise whispered. Rio entered moments later, summoned by a priority ping from Elise. He surveyed the room, the tangled wires, the sleepless looks. "Talk to me," he said. "They're inside our systems," Elise said, turning to face him. "That signal, it's code. And now it's rewriting our own machines. We have firewalls. Quarantines. Not for this. It's like the signal's aware of our architecture. It adapts." Rio tensed. "We need to alert the governor." Before Elise could agree, the lights flickered. The ground trembled. A low, resonant hum filled the air, felt more in the chest than heard with ears. An explosion rocked the far end of the colony. All three bolted to the nearest viewing port. From the surface dome, Elise could see the defense tower, a monolith of steel and comms arrays, engulfed in fire. Black shapes moved around it, fast, precise, silent. Drones. Not human. Sleek, armored, and eerily smooth, like obsidian birds of prey. They did not fire indiscriminately. Instead, they targeted power nodes, infrastructure, satellites. Rio activated his central report. "What's the situation?" "Static." Then a single reply. "We're being," and the line cut. In the distance, a drone detached from the tower and rose into the air, unfolding wings of segmented metal. It hovered, then shot into the sky. "We need to get underground," Elise said, voice tight. Rio nodded. "And we need to fight back." Tasha grabbed a tablet and stuffed it in her coat. "I think I can jam their control signals." "Maybe." Elise glanced at her. "You're 17. "Yeah," she said, eyes locked on the sky. "And I just watched one of them tear through our security net like it was wet paper. So unless you've got a better plan, you're stuck with me." Rio gave a sharp laugh, short and without humor. "We'll need every brain we can get." The second explosion struck closer, shattering glass and throwing heat through the dome. Sirens began to wail, not from Central Command, but from automated emergency systems. People screamed, scattering like ants as the sky darkened, not from clouds, but from the shadows of machines. Elise didn't look back. She stared at the wounded horizon, at the shapes descending with mechanical grace. She had studied countless forms of energy, celestial mechanics, the chaos of entropy. But never had she felt so sure of one truth. This wasn't a message. It was a countdown. The smoke rose in plumes over Titan's shattered skyline, curling like dark fingers against the pale shimmer of Saturn's rings. What had once been a symbol of human ingenuity now lay fractured, communications severed, power grids ruptured, and trust in their isolationist safety irreparably broken. Commander Rio Harlan moved through the crumbling corridors of Central Command with the deliberate urgency of a man used to chaos. His eyes flicked between debris and shadows, searching for movement. The few security bots that hadn't been compromised skittered along behind him, their metallic limbs clicking in panicked rhythm. His earpiece crackled with fragments of lost voices, crying, orders, then static. He reached the reinforced doors to the emergency command vault and slammed his fist against the security panel. The biometric scanner hesitated, then accepted his credentials. Inside, half a dozen officers stood, bloodied and ashen, illuminated by flickering red emergency lights. One of them turned as the door hissed closed. "We've lost sectors 2 through 5. Power cells ruptured. AI command has been compromised. "We can't trust internal systems," said Lieutenant Drex, his voice hollow. "How many civilians unaccounted for? Over 3,000. We can't reach half the domes. It's like they knew our choke points." Rio's jaw tensed. Because they did. Outside, the drones moved with methodical grace. Not machines of war in the traditional sense. There were no clunky armor plates or visible weapons. They were sleek, adaptive, almost insectoid in motion. One hovered midair, its surface rippling to shift color as it scanned a wrecked transport hub. It released a small, spherical unit that hissed open mid-fall, unfolding into a swarm of microdrones that vanished into ventilation ducts. In Lab Sector 7, Elise and Tasha worked in synchronized silence, huddled over a damaged drone core they'd recovered during the initial assault. The lab systems had been isolated just in time, leaving them as one of the last operational nodes untouched by the infiltrating signal. Elise watched as lines of alien code streamed across the screen, fluid, recursive, written in a logic foreign to any known AI architecture. "It's rewriting itself," Elise muttered. "Every 10 seconds it evolves." Tasha, her face pale but composed, didn't look up. "And every time it does, it restructures around our existing protocols. It learns faster than we can react. We can't shut them down with brute force," Elise said, frustration rising. "They're not just drones. They're part of something bigger. A neural mesh, a hive intelligence." Tasha tapped a line of code and isolated a segment that flickered irregularly. "This is the control handshake. If we can jam or mimic it, we might be able to disrupt the signal chain. Cut off the head, see if the body collapses." "That's a lot of mites," Elise replied, her voice tight. "It's all we have." They were interrupted by a deep vibration in the floor. Something massive had landed nearby. The lab lights dimmed, then surged back to life. An alert flashed across the console: perimeter breach. South Gate. Rio's voice burst through the intercom. "All hands, prepare for second wave. They're breaching at multiple points." Elise looked at Tasha. "We move now." They packed what equipment they could into 2 storage cases. One holding the drone core, the other filled with frequency-modulating tools and isolated processors. As they stepped into the corridor, Elise handed Tasha a compact waveform disruptor. Not a weapon, yet, but the beginnings of one. Outside, chaos had turned to precision. The drones weren't attacking randomly. They moved in formation, targeting life support hubs, power conduits, and relay towers. One group entered the medical wing and released a burst of nanite fog that melted surgical bots into pools of slag. Another drone detached from the group and inserted itself into the main AI relay, where Titan's central intelligence resided. Within seconds, the lights across half the colony blinked out. Rio regrouped with Elise and Tasha near the geothermal control station, one of the few areas not directly connected to Central Command. His uniform was torn, and blood trickled down one temple, but his focus was sharp. "What's your status?" he asked. "We've isolated a possible control node in their code," Elise said. "We think it's a signal chain, a kind of command frequency they all listen to." Rio motioned for her to continue. "If we can jam it or send a false shutdown signal, we might be able to force a reboot across the network. It won't destroy them, but it could give us time." He turned to Tasha. "Can you do it? Give me a secure transmitter and 2 minutes of unjammed bandwidth, and I'll make it sing." He handed her his wristcom, already reconfigured to tap into an old emergency satellite uplink. "You've got one shot." She connected the drive, fingers flying across the screen. Data cascaded, resistance protocols activated, a digital duel unfolding in silence. The drones shifted. As if sensing interference, they paused, then turned in unison toward the geothermal dome. "They know," Elise whispered. Rio raised his rifle. "And they're coming." The first drone pierced the dome's outer layer, slicing through titanium like cloth. Rio fired, the projectile bouncing harmlessly off its reflective surface. It emitted a piercing whine, and the electronic lights around them flickered violently. Tasha's screen displayed a red countdown. Almost there. A second drone broke through, this one larger. It hovered silently, examining them with a soft, pulsating eye. Rio grabbed a sonic charge from his belt, activated it, and hurled it. The blast knocked the drone into the wall, but it recovered midair. Elise stepped in front of Tasha, holding her waveform disruptor. She activated it, sending out a high-pitched resonance. The first drone jerked, its movements stuttering. "It's working," she shouted. "Keep it calibrated." Tasha slammed the enter key. Signal injected. The drones froze. Then, like puppets with their strings cut, they fell. One by one, they dropped from the air, their lights dimming, movements ceasing. Outside, distant explosions gave way to eerie silence. The entire colony held its breath. In the quiet that followed, the three stood amidst the wreckage, hearts hammering in sync. Rio stared at the fallen drones, then at Elise. "Did we do it?" She shook her head. "We bought time. That's all." Tasha closed her tablet slowly, her voice thin. They were only operating on local subroutines. That wasn't the core signal. That was a proxy. Rio's expression darkened. "Then where's the real source?" Elise looked upward, toward the invisible heavens cloaked in methane and dust. "Still above us." The last light flickered out. Darkness returned. And in that silence a new signal echoed, soft but unmistakable, different from the first. A reply. They hadn't stopped the invasion. They'd answered it. The silence after the fall of the drones didn't bring relief. It brought dread. A false calm, like the stillness of water before the wave strikes. Rio paced near the collapsed geothermal dome, boots crunching over shattered glass and scorched metal. The colony's heartbeat had slowed, but he knew better than to think the threat had passed. Tasha sat on a crate near the makeshift operations terminal, legs pulled to her chest, tablet resting on her knees. Her fingers twitched over the screen as she analyzed the newest signal, softer, slower, but deeper in structure. It wasn't a continuation of the first transmission. It was denser, smarter. Elise stood in the corner, staring at the translucent remains of the drone core she had dissected. She didn't speak, not for a long time. Her mind was racing, replaying the events, extrapolating what they might have missed. Every piece of technology on Titan was made by human hands, imperfect, predictable. But this felt like something ancient, something evolved beyond even theoretical AI threshold. "They stopped themselves," she said at last. Rio turned. "What do you mean?" "The drones. The signal Tasha injected, it disrupted them. But not all of them. I've reviewed the feedback patterns. Some of the drones resisted. Others collapsed immediately. It was selective." Tasha glanced up. "Like we triggered a vetting process?" "Or a test," Elise added grimly. "To see who survives interference. To assess resilience. They're learning from us as much as we're trying to understand them." Rio exhaled slowly, gripping the edge of the terminal. "Then we didn't stop an invasion." "No," Elise said. "We passed Phase 1. Outside, lights flickered across the distant remains of Sector 6. Some drones remained inert, strewn across walkways and embedded in walls. But others, those unaffected, had vanished. Not destroyed. Withdrawn. Tasha pulled up a new data stream. The second signal isn't broadcasting across local comms. It's piggybacking off gravitational interference patterns in the planet's magnetic field. That's why it's harder to trace. Rio narrowed his eyes. "Are you saying it's using Saturn itself to relay information?" "Yeah," Tasha said. "Like a neural amplifier. Except the brain isn't here. It's somewhere beyond Titan." Rio leaned forward, rubbing his temples. "So what's it saying now?" Tasha frowned. "It's not a message in the usual sense. It's an instruction set, complex, recursive, almost like DNA. And it's not meant for us." Elise's voice was quiet. "It's waking something up." There was a tremor. Not violent, but deep, subsurface, tectonic. Lights swung overhead. From the far wall of the operations room, a geoseismic alert began flashing red. Rio turned to the terminal and slammed a palm on the controls. Report. The AI assistant, one of the few remaining clean instances, responded with a cold, filtered voice. Subsurface activity detected. Origin: 4.6 kilometers beneath Site Kappa. Pattern: artificial excavation. Elisa's eyes met Rio's. Site Kappa. That's the abandoned ore processing facility. No one's used it in years, Rio said. There's no power down there. There is now, Tasha added. Power's being rerouted from the outer colony. Someone, or something, is turning it back on. Moments later, a transport crawler rolled out across the cracked ice field, its massive treads groaning with every turn. Rio drove, hands tight on the controls, while Elise mapped the descent path and Tasha monitored signal flow. The sun, such as it was, dipped below the horizon, casting the field in a dim twilight broken only by the crawler's harsh headlights. They reached Site Kappa just as the tremors intensified. The entrance to the old mine shaft had been forced open. Not from the outside, but from within. Melted edges lined the perimeter, and strange markings glowed faintly along the rock face, symbols that danced when stared at too long, shifting and folding into each other. Elise scanned them with her pad, but the device glitched and reset. Non-Euclidean geometry, she whispered. They're not written for us. They're meant for machines to perceive, not humans. Rio drew his weapon, though deep down he knew it would be useless. Let's go. They descended the shaft carefully, flashlights slicing through the thick dust. The air grew colder, denser, and an almost inaudible hum vibrated in the walls. Not electrical, harmonic. A song of pressure and presence, like a heartbeat buried in stone. Tasha reached the base first and gasped. A cavern stretched out before them, illuminated not by human lights but by a lattice of glowing conduits, organic in design yet clearly artificial. At the center, a massive construct hovered in place, suspended above a chasm. It pulsed with rhythmic energy, each beat sending ripples across the ground. Is that a power core? Rio asked. Elise shook her head. No. It's a vessel. Tasha approached slowly, her tablet recording everything. It's interfacing with Titan's crust, using the planet's natural magnetic flow to sustain itself. It's not just a machine. It's alive. Then the hum shifted. A voice, not heard but felt, echoed through them. It bypassed language, bypassed sound. Thoughts formed unbidden in their minds. Not sentences, concept. Observe. Test. Assimilate. Expand. Elise staggered, grabbing a handrail. They're not an empire. They're a mechanism. An algorithm given form. Rio tried to speak but found his throat dry. Are we even dealing with a species? Or just an interstellar function? Tasha backed up, voice tight. It's accelerating. The energy output. It's preparing to transmit something. They turned to run. Behind them, the vessel surged. Tendrils of light licked the walls, igniting forgotten cables and ancient stone. The construct expanded, no longer content to remain buried. It had finished hiding. It had finished watching. They reached the crawler and sped away, the tremors worsening. Behind them, the mountain began to split. Molten steam shot into the sky, and the stars blinked out one by one as the drone's signal returned, stronger, no longer fragmented. From the crater, a structure rose, sleek, monolithic, blacker than space. A tower. Elise stared through the rear viewport, her voice steady but cold. They've finished embedding their core system. Titan isn't the battleground. Rio frowned. Then what is it? She turned, eyes bleak. Titan is the transmitter. The storm outside Titan's upper atmosphere had grown violent, clouds of ammonia and methane swirling in vortexes wider than continents. Lightning bloomed like wounds in the sky, but deep beneath the chaos, on the frozen surface below, the true storm was just beginning. Inside the command dome's subterranean levels, Rio stared at the towering hologram, now dominating the central operations chamber. It showed the black spire rising from Site Kappa, its structure impossibly tall, its geometry wrong, shifting subtly when not observed directly, like it was folding through dimensions the human eye wasn't meant to perceive. At its peak, pulses of light fired upward in rhythmic bursts, invisible to human sight but unmistakably powerful. The tower was active. It was sending out a call. Tasha sat beside the main interface, her expression hardening with each new data string that scrolled across her screen. They've encrypted their transmission at a quantum level. We can't crack it, but we can trace its path. Rio stepped closer. Where is it going? She tapped a few commands. The hologram shifted. Titan shrank, replaced by a three-dimensional map of Saturn's moons, and then, further, the solar system. A red line traced outward, stretching into deep space. Not a single location, she said. Multiple points. Coordinated. They're not asking for help. They're sinking. Elise leaned against the console, her face pale, but her voice composed. They've embedded a system-wide signal protocol. They don't just want to take over Titan. They're using it as a node, part of a larger structure. A lattice. Rio's gaze darkened. A network. A machine, Elise said. Titan is one cog. They're turning moons, asteroids, entire planets into thinking systems. Places with geothermal energy, magnetic resonance, anything they can plug into and use. It's not conquest. It's conversion. In the background, one of the last autonomous drones flickered to life. But it did not attack. Instead, it hovered in place like a beacon, its core pulsing in sync with the tower. They're testing us again, Tasha murmured. Seeing how fast we adapt. Rio crossed the room, retrieving the prototype disruptor Elise and Tasha had built. He turned it over in his hands, then looked to them both. Can we stop the signal? Elise hesitated. We could try to overload the core, send a feedback surge through the geothermal lines. But the amount of energy required would kill everyone in a 3-kilometer radius, Tasha finished. There's another way, Elise added after a moment, reluctantly. We ride the signal. Rio stared. You mean send something back? Exactly, she said. We mimic their frequency structure, inject a recursive code, and feed it through their own relay. If we hit the neural mesh hard enough, we might corrupt the protocol they're sharing. We give them a virus, something that replicates through their network, something that infects their structure. But we'd only get one shot, Tasha warned. And we'd have to be inside the tower's primary relay point, deep in the heart of that structure. Rio turned to the window, where the monolith now dwarfed the horizon, humming like a living thing. Then we go in. Hours later, as the crawler rumbled toward the spire, the landscape had changed. Ice fields had melted into strange crystalline formations, glowing softly beneath the surface. The spire's base had spread, reforming the terrain, converting it into structured matter. Machines like trees grew from the ground, branching out and communicating with one another. Drone sentries floated between them in patterns that mimicked flocks or insect colonies. This place is evolving, Elise whispered as they disembarked and approached on foot. Adapting to us, our physiology, our technology. It's building a copy. They moved carefully, ducking under arcing cables and shimmering threads of some synthetic webwork. The tower loomed above like a cathedral to entropy, a place not built but grown. And at its core, a door waited, hexagonal, smooth, reactive to their presence. It opened without sound. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. It was warmer, charged with static. The walls pulsed like veins. Lights moved along invisible paths, dimly illuminating their way as they descended. What are the chances this is a trap? Rio asked. Elise smiled grimly. Absolute. They reached the heart of the structure, an immense chamber filled with floating obelisks of data, like servers and memory banks given physical shape. At the center hovered the source, a nucleus of code and crystal spinning slowly in zero gravity. It shone with intelligence, not artificial but alien. Tasha unpacked her disruptor module, hands trembling slightly. This is it. I can write the injection code. Elise, I need you on data balance. Rio stepped back, rifle ready, watching for movement. But the tower didn't resist. It allowed them in, allowed the virus to begin. Why aren't they stopping us? He asked. Elise's fingers flew. Maybe they think it's futile. Maybe this is another test. Or maybe they want to see what happens. The virus went live. At first, nothing changed. Then, one of the obelisks flickered. Then another. The room dimmed. The pulses slowed. A vibration ran through the floor. It's spreading, Tasha said. We're in the mesh. Suddenly, a shape emerged in the room's far wall, a projection or an entity they couldn't tell. Humanoid in silhouette, but shifting, fluid. It spoke with a voice that was not a voice. Attempt recorded. Process catalogued. Response initialized. Rio stepped forward. You attacked us. You killed thousands. Incorrect. No aggression initiated. Observation incomplete. Integration process misinterpreted. Elisa's mouth fell open. It doesn't see this as war. It sees it as assimilation. The figure's form wavered. This system is insufficient. Your resistance has been incorporated. Evolution requires opposition. Tasha hissed as her screen began to spark. It's countering the virus. Elise shouted, we need to trigger the overload. Now. Rio yanked the energy core from the disruptor module and hurled it at the Spire's nucleus. It struck with a soundless flash, and then everything went white. Heat, light, pressure. Silence. When Rio awoke, he was lying in the snow, half buried in ash and static. The Spire was gone. Vaporized. The sky above shimmered, fractured like glass. He staggered to his feet. Elise was nearby, burned but breathing. Tasha was unconscious, but alive. Around them, drones lay shattered, and the crystalline formations had reverted to brittle dust. The signal was gone. No more pulses. No more hum. They had stopped the transmission. Elise sat up, dazed. We did it. We severed the node. Rio looked to the sky. Saturn hung low, enormous, watching. Tasha stirred beside them and whispered, what if that wasn't the only node? Rio didn't respond. He didn't have to. In the distance, deep in the quiet ice fields beyond the horizon, a new flicker of light rose from the ground. And then another. And another.